All right, like I was saying, we're going to do an episode going over all the ways that you can ruin your own case and therefore how to win your case, because all of these things you can just avoid. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of start at the very beginning and we'll go through the Social Security disability process, because there's many different opportunities. I think I said this in a podcast like 5 or 10 episodes ago. There are many different ways for you to ruin your case.
Absolutely.
It's not just one thing, then you got to avoid this, and then you're in the clear. There are many different ways that you could just
Lots of
tank
pitfalls.
it. Yep.
Absolutely.
So ruining your case before it even starts, and I'll kind of give you a couple categories to talk on, and you can tell me if this is something that ruins your case, or you can expand on it.
Okay.
So before you even file, only working cash jobs, so therefore not paying into FICA taxes, not having any medical treatment or real diagnoses for your case, and then you go to file for disability.
Right. Yeah, because what we see a lot is, especially somebody who's got some age on them, like somebody in their 40s or their 50s, and they make a statement, well, I've worked all my life. And you're like, oh, and you look at their earnings history and there's hardly anything there. Okay, well, you've worked all your life. Where? Well, I was doing a landscaping business. What's it, a cash-only business? Yeah. What did you pay in? Because you can do that. Self-employed people who are paid cash, they do it all the time. Well, no. Okay, there's no record of it. And if you want to file for disability, especially SSDI, Title II, you've got to be insured. And there is a way for you to get insured after the fact. You pay all that money in.
Yeah.
And if you're disabled, you don't have any money. You're not going to be able to pay all that money in, so you're not going to be able to file the Title II SSDI case. So yeah, that's a good way to, and people don't think about that. That's it's a good way to lose your case before it even starts. But who's planning for becoming disabled?
Yeah, no
You
one.
might be planning for retirement age Social Security. That's still going to be a problem, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't pay in, you don't pay in. It's the same pool of money, and if you don't have it in SSDI, you won't have it in retirement benefits when you become retirement age. So, you got to plan for that kind of stuff, even though nobody wants to plan for that kind of stuff. Nobody wants to plan for getting old, and nobody wants to plan for becoming disabled. So, but that is that's a surefire way of not just not being insured, but keep in mind that you're going in front of an adjudicator, whether it's the lower levels at the state agency or whether it's a judge at the administrative hearing level. You've got to make a good argument that I was in the workforce and now I'm separated because of my disabilities. And when their earning history is, well, there's nothing here. What do you mean you're separated from the workforce? I don't see that you actually were participating in the workforce because you weren't paying any taxes into FICA. And, it's a hard argument to make. And I get, if you've been paid cash for the longest time, especially, a lot of family-owned businesses. I worked for my uncle. My uncle's thought he's doing me a favor and he's just paying me cash. Okay, well, did you pay your withholding taxes? Was it enough that, you would actually owe taxes? Did you pay your FICA taxes? Did you pay your Medicare taxes? Those are all on there. And as an employer, we take care of that for our employees. And these cash-only businesses, they don't take care of anything like that. They think they're doing you a favor. You might think that they're doing you a favor paying you in cash. Yeah, rethink that.
Yeah.
That's all.
And for the record on that, we're not the IRS. We don't work for the IRS. In a lot of ways, we don't like the IRS. But
Does anybody like
the
the
IRS?
IRS?
We're just saying this objectively. If you work a cash job and you don't pay into Social Security, you're not eligible for retirement and you're not eligible for SSDI. You might still qualify for SSI depending on your income and resource situation, because that doesn't have to do with paying into taxes. Right. But again, that's not our job to really care about that, but we're just saying if you don't pay into taxes, you're not going to qualify.
Yeah, and if you come to us...
It's not our business.
Exactly. If you come to us and you say, I'm disabled and this is what went down, one of the last things that's going to be considered in whether or not we take your case is your earnings history. If you're 48 years old and technically there's no earning history because you're paid in cash and you have a great disability case, good medical treatment. Everything that you tell me that's going on with you, the medical records are going to support, I'll probably still take your case. But it'll be an SSI case.
Yeah.
And, just anticipate that.
I hear people all the time, especially in the comment section of the ads that I run, to where I got approved for SSI, but it's only 900 something. I need to get approved for my SSDI too. It's like, well, if you're approved for only SSI, that means that you don't qualify for SSDI, because medically it's the same thing.
That's
they
right.
look at medically it's the same, and then technically it's how they differentiate is, your tax situation. Have you paid into taxes? And for SSDI, have you paid in recent enough to still qualify for the program?
Right. And not knocking cash-only business because, America runs on business. Just make sure that you pay your FICA. That's it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to write a check. If you pay into the system, the system can pay out to you when it's time.
Yep.
The other thing you asked for about not getting medical treatment.
Yeah. Say you haven't even been diagnosed. You definitely have something wrong with your back. You probably have diabetes, but you don't actually see a doctor, and then you go to file for benefits.
Yeah, really difficult to win that case. What would likely determine whether you're approved or not is an exam that Social Security sends you to. They pay for it. All they do is expect you to get to it. And they'll do an exam, and it's kind of a superficial exam. They're rarely going to do any radiology. Sometimes they'll do an x-ray. They'll never do an MRI because they're so expensive. They won't do a CAT scan. Sometimes they might do a breathing study. Sometimes they might do an EKG because they're not terribly expensive. But most of the time, it's just going to be, you come in, the doctor asks you, can you bend over and touch your toes? Can you heel to toe walk? Can you, stand on one leg? That kind of stuff. Or if it's a mental exam, they're just going to, what's the shape of a ball? What are the three colors of the American flag? Who's the president now? Who was the president before? And you're going to get some questions like that. What do you do during the day? Do you have to take care of pets? Can you count backwards from 100 by sevens? That kind of stuff. And that's going to be it. How persuasive is that if that is the totality of your medical records? Okay, well, I've got this horrible depression, and I've been struggling with it for years. Have you seen anybody for that? No. So this one exam where you went in there, maybe you even had a good day, and you went in there and there's nothing wrong with this person. They send Social Security this exam. Here's the report you ordered and paid for, and this client or this claimant, doesn't have any limitations. Or physically, you go in there and you do have some problems. You can't stand on one leg for very long, or, certain ranges of motion really hurt. And so that's all documented in the case record, but that's it. And so the adjudicator's like, well, it's kind of hard for me to approve this person on one exam. And so a lot of times they don't.
Yeah.
And in previous podcasts, I've talked about, what I feel about these consultative exams, these one-off consultative exams, usually performed by a provider who doesn't have a practice.
Yeah.
I mean, that.
All they do is just Social Security.
Are you an MD? Yes, I am. I am. So you're up to date with your medical license? I certainly am. Do you have any patients? No. I just do evaluations. I do them for insurance companies. I do them for workers' comp. I do them for Social Security. Okay, all right. But you don't have any patients. You don't prescribe any medication. How up to date are you on current, medical procedures, medical technology, if you don't have any patients? You're just an evaluator.
Yeah.
So how I feel about, if you don't know how I feel about consultative exams, I think they're usually purchased to deny a case.
Yeah.
They're usually purchased for Social Security to have ammunition to fight against medical records that show you are disabled, which blows me away. Why did they order an exam You had current medical records, you had, everything in those medical records you need to make a decision. And it's kind of strange. You spent taxpayer money on a consultative exam. Oh, okay, that's why you did it. You need something to support a denial. And I wish didn't sound so bitter, but it's only because I am so bitter.
Yep. Okay. So now when actually filing the case,
All right.
things, again, I'm going to give you things that may be a problem, maybe they're not a problem, maybe they're more of a problem than I even realize. Not listing every medical provider when you initially file the case. Also, not filling out all of the forms that they send you, or even lying on the forms. Lying on the forms intentionally is obviously a problem, but even not going into detail and putting something that's like, well, that's not really true, or you probably should have thought more about your answer.
Right.
How big of a problem is that for your case?
Yeah, and those are both extremely problematic. What we normally see, we don't see a whole lot of our clients or a claimant filling out a form that is just unbelievable. For example, I've got, degenerative disc disease in my lumbar spine. I'm curled up in my bed, 23 out of 24 hours. And the 1 hour that I'm not curled up in my bed, it's because I'm going to the bathroom or I'm eating. So, that's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
If you write that on a form, I can guarantee you that you're going to be questioned on it down the road. If not by me, if you want me to be your rep, certainly by an adjudicator in Social Security. And an administrative law judge comes to mind. They would say something like, well, are you literally not doing anything for 23 out of 24 hours a day? And then they'll, what about household chores?
It's like, oh, yeah, well, I do that.
Yeah, I can do that. Well, what about driving? Do you have a driver's license? Yeah. Do you drive? No, not really. How do you get to your doctor's appointment? Well, yeah, I drive to those.
Yeah.
Okay. Who does your grocery shopping? Well, I live alone. I don't have anybody do my grocery shopping. Do you do your grocery shopping? Yeah, if I have to, If you have to, okay. Grocery shopping, you got to have food. And this kind of line of questioning it's just unraveling. I'm in the bed 23 hours out of 24 hours.
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Now it's 20, now it's 18,
right.
now it's 14.
And all of that's been unraveled. And you might think that it's okay because at the end of the day, you've come clean. Everybody understands it. No, you're not okay. You've come across as being completely uncredible, not credible.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not credible in one thing, the decision maker is almost always going to say they're not credible in anything. Filling out forms, exaggerating on the form, that's a huge problem. Lying, you said lying on a form. Well, that's fraud, and if we notice that, we'll drop your case. We'll dump you like a hot potato.
That's just fraud.
I'm just not going to be involved in that. But that's not normally what we see. When it comes to the forms, and this is, to me, it's equally as bad. It's not illegal, but it's equally as bad to your case. What we normally see is, not going to fill them out. No, my medical records should be enough.
Yeah, I shouldn't have to fill those out.
Okay, well, the medical records, unless you've told your doctor what you do during the day, if you were able to feed your pets, unless you told them all those kinds of things, they're not going to be in your medical records. The forms basically supplement your medical records. Let's talk about what you do during the day. Are you able to feed your pets? Are you able to, pay your bills? Mm-hmm. Are you able to do household chores? Are you able to shop? Are you able to drive? Are you able to, do all these things? Those forms will ask that. And then you can discuss them, and obviously you want to be as honest as you possibly can. And I always tell my clients when they're filling out their forms, every answer you answer, and every answer that you've answered, you explain. Mm-hmm. You never just say, are you able to drive? Yes. Is there more to the story? Well, yeah, there's more to the story. I don't want to write it on a form. Well, what's the rest of the story? Well, I can drive for about 10 minutes at a time, and then my back is hurting so much I literally have to pull over, which is kind of dangerous. You got to write that on a form.
Mm-hmm.
That is the question. So if you have these huge long answers to these short, yes or no questions, that's fine. On a form, go ahead and answer everything completely. If you're able to do things, great. Pretty much all of my disabled clients are able to do some things. But it's your opportunity to say the problems that you have doing them. Disabled people don't do things quickly. They don't do things completely, and then sometimes there are things that they can't do at all, and those kinds of limitations need to be on the form. So you answer it truthfully, but answer it completely.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, worse than really equally as bad as lying on a form is just not filling them out.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the glory days when I worked for Social Security disability, we really didn't deny people for not filling out a form.
Just rolled your eyes.
We just kind of rolled our eyes and, okay, well, they're kind of lazy. We'd still deny them, but we wouldn't deny them for not filling out a form. Now, you were sent such and such paperwork, and therefore we're unable to make a decision in your case, and therefore your case is denied. Well, whoa, okay. And that's problematic because, one, you've just gotten denial, and two, the reason for your denial is there for God and everybody to see down the road. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about an administrative law judge. Well, Mr. Smith, they gave you ample opportunity to explain these things early on, and you didn't do it. Do you have a reason that you didn't send in these forms? Well, I just didn't want to do them.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well, how serious are you about your claim?
How disabled are you? That's what they're going to be thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of people, we've talked about this before, they expect the representative to fill out the form. And there's nothing wrong, and it happens every day of every week. There's nothing wrong with you calling us and talking to your case manager. I've got these questions about this. Do I need to do this? And we can instruct you on how to fill out the form. But we will never fill out your form because the form is for you. The form is for you to talk about your life. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot about your medical records, but I don't know about your life. And I'm really not qualified to tell somebody to write, on behalf of you, write all of your answers. Once again, we're kind of bordering on fraud if I'm doing that. So, no, you've got to fill out the form. It's sent to you. It's about you. You're the best person on planet Earth to talk about you because mm-hmm. you know you better than anybody else does. Just fill out the form.
Yeah.
There's going to be 3 big forms that you need to worry about. The ADL form, activities of daily living. What do you do during the day? Can you cook, clean, shop, drive, visit, take care for pets, get along with other people, get along with authority? ADL, activities of daily living. It's going to come to you in almost all cases, but especially cases where there's some kind of mental component. You're depressed, you're anxious, PTSD, ADHD, ADD, anything like that. And then the other one is the pain questionnaire. Pain questionnaire is exactly what you think it is. It's saying, okay, where is your pain located? What's it like? What kind of medications are you taking for it? Do you have any side effects from the medication? How frequently are you having that kind of pain? These are great questions, and if you fill out the form, it's great because it's in your file, and I can use it. And then the last one is the work history form. Once again, we would never, ever deny a case in the olden days when I worked for Social Security for not filling out the work history form wholesale now. We get them every week. Mm-hmm. They didn't send in their work history form, and they're 56 years old, and we have to have that information because it depends on what they did. If what they used to do they can't do anymore at a certain age, we would have to find them disabled, but they didn't send in the form, and therefore we're going to deny the case.
Yeah.
Work history form is exactly what it sounds like. For the past 5 years, what did you do? What was your job title? How much did you make? How many hours you work a day? What you lift, carry? How long do you have to be on your feet? How long did you have to use your arms and hands? Was it a job that you had to have a lot of skill for, or was it more of an entry-level, unskilled job? I mean, all that information is crucial to your case, and you're not going to get that in medical records.
Yeah.
It's a form that you have to fill out. So again, one of the worst things you can do for your case is, I'm not going to fill out any of those forms.
Yeah, okay. And then on going back to the other thing I said, not listing every medical provider, along the same lines of how big of a problem is it if you don't give Social Security the evidence that they're asking for. So say you go to 3 hospitals or, offices, whatever, providers, 3 different ones, completely different networks, and you only put 2 of them down. One of them, you had a surgery there a year ago. You've been there 2 or 3 or 5 times since then, but you don't put that one down. How big of a deal is that?
Huge. Yeah, that's another thing, because Social Security has to consider everything. They have to consider, they call it the whole body. They have to consider any kind of impairment you have from head to toe, and including any kind of psychological problems too. And we've talked about this before on podcasts. If you've been a lifelong diabetic and you have an endocrinologist, you don't even think of him as an endocrinologist anymore. In fact, you don't call him Doctor something.
You call him Derek.
Yeah, you call him by his first
Yeah.
name. Why? Because you've been seeing him for 10 years. And what is every time you go in, he asks you about what have your fasting blood sugars been, what's your diet like, how's the insulin working out for you? Do you have any kind of numbness or tingling? Do you have any vision problems? All the telltale signs of diabetes related problems that get worse and worse and worse. And you see him every 3 to 6 months, and you've been dealing with it all your life. But when you had your back problems, that's when you became disabled. And so you're going to list everything about your back problems, and you're going to list everything about, any kind of depression that you had because, you're not able to work anymore, and you're going to list all this stuff and all this treatment. But Derek, you're not going to list because why am I even thinking? I see him every 6 months. He maintains, and under the radar, somebody who's insulin dependent, dependent
Yep.
diabetic, and you're starting to have some numbness and tingling, but I'm expecting that. He's been warning me about that for years. Well, Social Security has to think about that, and in certain situations, that might be the thing that puts you over the edge. And they're he's insulin dependent, and he's starting to have some numbness and tingling. There's no way that he could make, especially with his back surgery now, there's no way that he could make it through an 8-hour workday.
Yeah.
But you didn't list it because you didn't think about it. Not a big deal, but been dealing with it all my life. Well, you got to list it. So, just be as absolutely thorough as you can, because you should expect Social Security to be thorough. We do. I expect you to consider all of my clients' ailments. I expect you to consider all of their medical records that are within the prescribed period, basically about a year before they became disabled until now. And I expect you to give it all due consideration, because that's the head-to-toe, whole person requirement.
Yep. Yeah, if anyone wants to go deeper into the whole medical records thing, we did an episode, I think it's just called Do All Medical Records Matter? What All Medical Records Matter for Your Case? So that's a whole episode that we did about medical records. Okay, next one. So they say they paid into the system. So they qualify for SSDI. They have all of this documented medically before they file. They don't lie on the form. They don't commit fraud. They fill out the forms correctly.
Right.
But then after filing, they do go back to work full-time without telling Social Security.
Well, I got two answers for that.
Yeah.
The day you go back, it's almost foolish if you were to tell Social Security the day you go back, well, I've started working again. Because you want to make sure that this isn't just some flash in the pan, that you suddenly got better, and you really haven't tested on whether it's going to last or not.
Yeah.
What we normally tell people is, if you go back to work and you've been working for a month or so, you need to report it. And if you don't report it, and they find out about it, which, by the way, they always will find out about it.
Yep.
100% of the time. If you work for somebody who pays your taxes and, actually pays any taxes, they've got to report it to the state that it's a new hire. They have to report wages quarterly. I do it as an employer. I do it every single quarter. I'm reporting all sorts of stuff. I have to.
Yeah.
And it's going to show up. And it might show up about 6 months later, but it's still going to show up, and they're going to find out about it. And so, you want to report it. If we're representing you, you can report it to us, and we'll report it. I mean, we'll basically say we're not asking for the case to be suspended, or we're not asking for the case to be closed. We believe Mr. So-and-so is still disabled. However, he's trying to work, and we'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll keep you posted.
We'll let you know if the work,
right.
Because Social Security allows you to work for a certain amount of time. It's usually between 3 to 6 months. If you've worked for 6 months solid, they consider that you've returned to the workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So if you haven't reported it by then, they're going to be like, he deliberately didn't do that.
Yeah.
But, if you've reported it, after a couple months, you're going to be fine. Not reporting it at all and then just letting the case go as far as it's going to go is going to really turn out poorly for you.
Yeah, I mean, they'll hit you with an overpayment eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you're working and you try to waive the overpayment, then they're going to usually say no because you do have the money because you're working.
Yeah. Well, there's two ways that it won't go well for you. The first one that I was thinking of is that at a hearing, a judge is going to be like, well, what about these earnings from, Acme, warehouse? Are you working? Yeah. Did you report that you're working? No. How long have you been working there? Well, it'll be a week or a year next week.
Yeah.
Not going to go well for you. Or you're in that period where they haven't, your earnings aren't showing up because there is about a 3-month period where, your earnings don't show up.
It's a little delayed, yeah.
Yeah. And you go to a hearing and you get approved or you get approved to the lower level. And Elijah is absolutely correct. They're going to find out, and then they're going to slap you with an overpayment. And they're going to say, okay, well, all the money that we've been paying you, you didn't report that you were working, and so now you have to pay us back. A Social Security overpayment will hang over you like a dark cloud for forever, too, by the way. If you've still got an overpayment by the time you retire, guess what? They're going to get that money back before Social Security is going to get that money back before they give it to you.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
it's serious. And you're right. Requesting a waiver while you're working is like, well, yeah, I have the money and I can pay you back, but I don't have the money and I can't pay you back.
Yeah, because I mean, if it's SSI only and there was some kind of like you changed your address, so you didn't get the mail, so they stopped your benefits, and now you're homeless, and you have like $70 to your name, and it's
different.
for a specific medical appointment, and then they say that you owe $20,000 back to them. That's when you fill out the waiver because you are genuinely saying, I'm not paying this back. There's no way I can. There's no possible way I could pay this back.
And it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything.
That's
deliberate.
the main thing.
Yeah, I didn't do anything deliberate. It was a mistake. Blah blah blah. And and they're usually pretty cool about that. Social Security is, especially in SSI cases, because SSI is a needs-based program. It's you are, you're in the lower echelon of income in the United States if you're qualifying for SSI.
Cool. All right, we'll stop it there and then do a part 2 for the other ways that you can ruin your case, going kind of into the hearing and past there.
Cool.
If you have a question about your disability case, drop it in the comment section below, and we will do our best to answer it in the next episode.